Before we get in the driver's seat, we're going to do a walk around checking our vehicle, making sure there's no cracks or damage to the back window. Our lenses look good to our taillights, no cracks, no body damage, making sure we have our license plate on and that we're insured, and making sure that L is on the back. Checking underneath the car to make sure there's no animals or objects that we could run over. Now we're going to move our way to the side here, checking for body damage, making sure there's no cracks to our windows. You also want to make sure that sometimes when you're parked in a parking lot or people are passing by, your mirror might get pushed in. So we always want to make sure this is popped out, otherwise you're going to have problems when you're driving on the road. Checking our tires, making sure they have good air pressure. Can also check ground level to make sure of that. And once in a while, we can check the tread. So sometimes cars, the tires can wear unevenly. So when you do check the tread, make sure you check all the way on the inside as well. Okay, looking pretty good. Checking the air pressure. Making sure there's no cracks to our windshield. Our headlights look good, no body damage. Got our front plate on. And checking underneath the front is especially important because not only are you looking for objects or animals, but you want to make sure there's no leaks. The engine is in the front, so if there are going to be leaks, it's most likely going to be in the front. For most cars, the engine is in the front. Okay, checking our tire. Good air pressure. And no body damage. No cracks to our windows. And you also want to make sure you check your mirrors for damage too. You don't want to have any cracks, or sometimes water can get in the mirrors and there can be discoloration and stuff like that. So making sure your mirrors are in good condition and making sure that the gas door is closed. Okay, so once we've walked around our entire vehicle and checked it out, we can hop on in. First thing we need to adjust is our seat. So all cars are different. Some, especially newer cars, will have electronic controls for adjusting your seat forward and for moving it back, as well as the backrest going back and forward. For this one, it's an older car and quite simple. It has manual controls, so I just pull that and the seat pops forward, and to put it back I pull this up and push that back, and to move the whole seat forward and back I would pull up on this guy. I'm not going to though because I have a camera rigged there. And you want to make sure that the headrest is also going to be level with your head. That way in an accident it can prevent neck injuries or other injuries when it's properly adjusted. So the way we want to have our seat is so reach with her foot to the firewall. Okay, so that way if we need to, we can have full brake pressure or full throttle. So right now my foot can reach all the way there. Another thing is we want to have the steering wheel come just past our hands. So that looks good for me. And if not, then obviously we need to adjust our seat, but we can also adjust the steering wheel. And right under there is a adjuster. You just pop that down, and then I can move the steering wheel up or down. Some even have in or out. And again, all adjusters are going to be different. Okay, so that feels good. So once we're comfortable in our seat and we're feeling good with our seat adjustment, then we can move on to adjusting the mirror. So for adjusting our mirrors, we want to make sure we can still see the edge of the car and the edge of the mirror. So I should see my car and about that much of the mirror. Okay, so that looks good. You want to have the horizon right in the middle. And to adjust the mirror for this car, we just use this guy right here. Okay, so we can move it around like that. Other cars will have automatic adjusters. That looks good for me. Okay. And that one is looking good too. Same thing on that side. We want to make sure that we can see the whole back window in our mirror. And if you can't see the entirety, that's okay. Just center it as much as possible. And then there's this little tab right here that if we're driving at night and we have blinding headlights behind us, we can flip this guy up and then it becomes a tinted rear mirror. Okay. So here we got a roll-up window. Pretty simple, no electronics. Moving on to here, we always want to make sure we turn our lights on when we're driving. It's scientifically proven to reduce crashes. If I push forward, I'm going to notice that that little blue light comes on, and that's my high beams. And then I'm going to pull back to take my high beams off. Now, not all cars are the same, but most are pretty similar. And for putting my right turn signal lights on, I'm going to put this guy up. And I can see my blinkers on there. Shows me right there. And then back to the neutral position. And down. I'm going to have my left blinker on. Just like that. Okay. So that's that. I got my horn right in the middle. And then I got my windshield wipers right here. If I put down, the more I go down, the faster they're going to get. And the more I go up, the slower they'll get until I get to the off position. You can also have a one-time temporary by just putting it all the way up. But it stays, this one anyways, stays off by all the way up. And to get some water, just pull in. Not turn my car on all the way, but just before I get to the point. And this is the for the accessories. So my radio came on, the volume's just down, and you can see all the lights that popped up. So right now, I'll do that one more time. Lights are off, and you'll see these two lights will fade right away. But this is basically there so that we can see, make sure all our warning lights are actually working. So that if a problem with our engine did happen, we would be notified with our check engine light or so forth. I do not have my seatbelt on, so that's why that is flashing. That's for your battery, and that guy, exclamation mark, is indicating you have your parking brake on. as it should be when you're parked. Okay, and this right here is my speedometer. That is my fuel gauge. A lot of cars will have an RPM gauge or a tachometer, and that's basically telling you how many rotations your engine is doing. And that's a good thing to have if you're driving a manual and you want to make sure you shift at a good RPM for fuel economy or to get a good speed going. You can also, if for whatever reason you were unsure if your car was running or not, you can look at the tachometer gauge, and if the needle's reading anything above 0, then you know your engine is running. Moving our attention down to the center here, we can see that little orange dot there is right beside our P, so we know we're in park. R for reverse, N for neutral. Neutral is basically you can give the engine as much gas, let the engine rev, but nothing will happen because it's not connected to your wheels, but your car will still roll if there's a decline or incline. Next we have D for drive, and then second and low. We won't worry about second and low. Whenever we're moving forward, we'll just be using drive. Moving our attention over to the center dash here, we have our hazard lights, which you could use for a number of things. Make sure you know for your heater, this guy here, because that's the front heater, and that's very important to know where that is or how to use it, because if your windows do fog up when you're driving, you won't be able to see. So that's why you need to make sure you know where that guy is so you can use him when need be. Also, you can use this to defrost your car's windshield in the wintertime when it's full of ice. And then this guy right here is for the rear defrost or rear defogging, and I'll show you. See all these little lines, and that's actually a heater coil, and they'll heat this window up, defogging it and de-icing it in the winter. If you did not know already, this guy right here is our brake, and this guy over here is our gas pedal. Okay, and I'm going to keep my left foot, since this is not a manual, on this side over here all the time. Okay, my right foot will be operating the brake and the gas pedal. If I had a manual, my left foot would be operating the clutch. Okay, I'm going to turn my car on now, making sure I have my foot on the brake. I'm going to throw my seatbelt on. And when I turn my car on, I'm not going to hold it very long, just a bit. And she's on. Okay. I'm going to put myself in drive. D right here. I'm going to release my parking brake. How we release the parking brake is we push in and just release. And to apply, we pull up. And before we move in any direction, we're going to do a 360-degree check around, checking in all our mirrors. Okay, making sure the coast is clear. Then we're going to look where we want to go, release our foot off the brake. At this point, we're not even going to use any gas, and we're going to slowly move forward. So I actually still have my foot on the brake. I'm going to release it completely off, and we'll actually get a pretty decent pace going here. And I'm going to try and stop as smoothly as possible. Okay, let's try that again. Get it going. foot is off the brake, and smoothly stop. So once you get comfortable with braking and the sensitivity, you can move on to steering. So for steering, I'm just going to do a left turn here. I'm going to use a bit of gas. So for steering, there's a couple things we want to know. I am stopped right now, and I am turning my wheel, which I do not want to do because that's going to put wear on the tires in uneven patches, and it's just not a healthy thing to do for tires, okay? So every time I'm turning my wheel, I'm going to be moving slightly. Now that we're all the way left, you can feel the wheel bounce when you get all the way left or all the way right. And we don't want to, the car actually might even make some noise. I don't know if you can hear that or not. But we don't want to hold the wheel in that position. So once we get there, we want to just back off just a tad bit, and we can hold it like that as we're going around a corner. So when we're driving, we want to make sure we have both hands on the wheel at the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock position. We want to put our thumbs up on the wheel. That gives us more accuracy and also prevents, if we're in a crash, it'll prevent any damage to our thumbs if the wheel all of a sudden spins. Okay, so now we can look at hand over hand steering. Okay, so you can practice hand over hand steering with anything from just sitting in your car with the engine off to a plate. Basically, since we're not moving, we don't want to move the wheel, but we can just slide our hands along the wheel. So if I'm going to the right, I'm going to bring my left hand up to the 12 o'clock position. The right hand is going to come back down to the 4 o'clock position, and once it's there, it's going to release and it's going to come back up, always grabbing at the 12 o'clock position and releasing at the 4 o'clock position. Okay, it's going to look something like that. If we're going back the other way, we're just going to slide the other way. Okay, now going to the left, grabbing at the 12 o'clock position, sliding my hands down, releasing at the 8 o'clock position this time, grabbing at the 12. Okay, and then if we're going back the other way, then we just can slide our hands back the other way. Okay, another actually easier, more smoother way to go back the other way, I'll show you in a sec here, is just letting the wheel slide through your hands, because the wheel will always want to correct itself. It likes to be straight like this. Okay, so I'll give you guys an example here of what hand over hand looks like. The best way to practice hand over hand is in an open parking lot doing figure eights. Okay, so grabbing at the 12 o'clock position, holding as I go around, and then I'm going to let it slide through my hands. And now I'm going left, looking where I want to go. Notice that time I did not let it slide through my hands. I put it back myself. So here again, I'll show you, I'm steering it just the other way, not letting it slide through my hands. Sometimes the wheel can be a little bit sticky. You might want to just put it back yourself. but I do find letting it slide through your hands is a lot smoother and more simpler. Always looking where I want to go. Waiting and releasing the wheel, letting it slide through my hands. Holding and letting it slide through my hands. And then once you've gone one way a couple times, you can go the other way. Okay. When you're doing hand over hand steering, you never want to hold the wheel with your hands crossed over like this. You always want to make sure they're not crossed over. So if I'm going to have to hold the wheel like this, I want to bring this hand to the side or to the top. So let's take a look at backing up. To reverse, we're going to put ourselves in R, and before we back up, we're going to look all around, checking all of our mirrors, and start slowly reversing by not even using gas, just releasing our foot off the brake. We never want to be going back fast. Reversing is not as safe and not as comfortable because we're always moving ourselves around, scanning 360 degrees. So it's best to be avoided. So when you can just drive forward into a parking spot, take full advantage of that. So if there's an open parking spot like this, instead of stopping in the first one, drive forward just like that, then I do not need to back up. Okay, so looking all around, I'm going to go to the left now. Very slowly straighten my wheel. Some people get confused with which way they should turn the wheel when they're reversing, and it's really straightforward. When you're going forwards, you turn the wheel the direction you want to go. So if I need to go to the right, I'm turning the wheel to the right. And if I'm going backwards, I still turn the wheel the direction I want to go. So here I'm turning to the left. I'm going to turn the wheel to the left. If I want to go to the right, turning my wheel to the right. But notice what happens to the front end as I turn to the right. The front end swings out, okay? And that's very important to note. And another reason why we need to be looking all around, because if you're in a parking lot and there's cars close by, you don't want to be so focused on the back that you don't pay attention to the front end, and the front end swings out and hits a car. So some cars have backup cameras, and some people wonder if they can actually use their backup camera on ICBC road test? And the answer is yes. As long as you're not taking your full attention onto the camera and you're still doing everything you need to when you're backing up, so looking all around, checking all your mirrors, you can still use it.